on, we sort of did a, not a debate necessarily. We had somebody who opposed the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. We had you, and you were quite emphatic that you like Brett Kavanaugh and what he brought to the table. A lot's happened in the last week or so. I'm curious if your perspective on this has changed at all.
Yeah, I mean, of course, my perspective has changed. So I was on here a few weeks ago and I was talking about how Brett Kavanaugh is an extremely well-qualified conservative judge. That is still true, but obviously some other things have come out. And I think that the new sexual assault allegation against him needs to be taken seriously, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he should withdraw his nomination. What we need is to have a hearing for both sides to testify, and then we need to get to the bottom of this.
So a lot of people have been talking about the politics and the optics, which is a popular term when we report these sort of things, with that letter that came out from Dianne Feinstein. Then we learned the name of the accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. But it sounds like tonight she's sort of hedging on this whole idea that she would testify. At one point, her lawyer said she would testify on Monday. Now there's talking about this FBI investigation, which likely won't happen. So if there's not going to be a public airing from both Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford, what do you do?
Yeah, if it comes down to no testimony, then accusations are not going to be enough. If it comes down to a he said, she said, and no credible evidence emerges, then we need to move on with the nomination. Because frankly, if you want to take down a Supreme Court nominee, you need to be willing to come forward and make your story available to the public. And I think that we're going to have to see where this goes, and hopefully we will get a hearing before Congress and we get to the bottom of this. And ultimately, if something did happen, then that is disqualifying, and we'll have to immediately move on. But without public testimony, I don't see a way that this can be viewed as anything but political.
One thing we talked about earlier this evening on 5 to 6:30 was the institution of, and we're talking about something different here, but the FBI, and that being an organization that has had, regardless of where you stand politically, the public's trust has eroded immensely in the FBI, for better or for worse, whether it was legitimate or not with how it handled certain things. From your perspective, I mean, you're a young American, you're engaged in the political process. Does this shake, I mean, this is a lifetime appointment, Brad, we know that. Does this shake the belief in the Supreme Court and the institution of the Supreme Court if this doesn't get some sort of thorough airing?
It absolutely does. And for the first reason that Republicans should give this a thorough airing is to be fair to the accuser. But the second reason is because they don't want to stain the legitimacy of Brett Kavanaugh's nomination were he to be confirmed, right? Every 5-4 decision that he was on the favor side of would be in dispute, right? The American public, their trust in the Supreme Court, which right now is pretty high, would be instantly eroded. It would become completely a political institution. That is a mistake. So ultimately, there's a long list of conservative jurists we can fall back on if need be. But that's one of the reasons, especially with electoral consequences coming up in the midterm elections, that this needs to be given a fair hearing.
And knowing what we've seen in the past sometimes, I was quite surprised that the president seemed to say, hey, we should hear this woman out. We should hear these allegations out. You had Kellyanne Conway say pretty much the same thing. You have others in the Republican Party who say, what the hell is this about? This is just a Democratic maneuver here to throw this asunder. It's sort of drawing up some interesting lines here. I think the only Republican senator that I'm not surprised that has not necessarily switched sides, but has a different perspective is Jeff Flake.
Yeah, I think Jeff Flake he has a point, and I think he's on the right track, because he's not saying that Brett Kavanaugh is instantly disqualified and must withdraw. All he's saying is we need to hear this out, and I think most reasonable people would agree that this vote can be delayed. It doesn't have to be canceled, right? Brett Kavanaugh can still be confirmed if nothing comes up, but there's absolutely no reason not to give this a thorough hearing, because even though believe all women isn't a workable philosophy, neither is ignore all accusers.
And I think as we watch this play out, it's going to be, as this has been, a fascinating process, and the political maneuvering, and however you want to classify this, this is one for the history books. Brad Polumbo, always nice to have you here tonight on the Final Five.
Thank you.